What's up, you guys? Welcome to the channel. My name is Chase, and today we will be talking about The Backrooms, which is a movie based off of a creepypasta on the internet, which I never really was too fond of. Like, it was never really my thing, but the thought of it actually being a thing, I was like, that could be like really creepy. That could be like very scary to be put in a situation like that, of just being endlessly put into all these rooms that just keep going and going and going. And I'm like, yo, if you get put in a situation like that, you're going to descend into madness. And Kane Parsons, who is a YouTuber with his directorial debut being in theaters right now, I gotta say, with The Backrooms, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, I am going to be talking light spoilers, maybe, at the end of this video, but let me go ahead and read you off a synopsis of the movie and give you guys my pros and cons. After a therapist's patient disappears into a dimension beyond reality, she must venture into the unknown to save him. And that's all I'm gonna say, because that premise, I kind of was going into the movie with that premise as well, and I gotta say that I got a different turnout from the movie, but in a good way. It did something in the movie where I was like, okay, and it didn't do what I thought it was gonna do based off of what I've read on the internet, but I was happily and thoroughly surprised with what they did in the movie itself. Now, when we talk about the characters in this movie, there's not a lot. There's not many. There's probably like a handful of characters within this movie. And to me, that's where a horror movie can really thrive in, because the more characters you have, the more you have to share the spotlight, the more you have to develop them, the more you have to really see if you want to make people care for these characters, or if people are going to be sad or mad if these characters die, or if you're just rooting for them to die within the movie. So when a horror movie like this kind of has a contained cast, I really do like it. And with the male lead, I'm not going to try and say his name. I've heard his name be said plenty of times. I know he's a good actor. I just can't say that name, and I'm not going to be disrespectful, but he is great in this movie. To me, he is my favorite character within this movie. He's probably going to be a lot of other people's favorite characters in this movie. In fact, he is a standout character in this movie. Honestly, when it comes to acting, he was at a top-notch level compared to the rest of his cast members. But that's not to say that the other ones were bad. It's just that they didn't really have a light to shine compared to him, because honestly, this movie focuses a lot more on him than I thought it was going to, especially based on the trailers itself. Now, from the trailers, you would think, okay, he gets lost, therapist finds the found footage, and she tries to investigate these whole backroom things. No, that's actually half of the movie, of him going into the back rooms and him exploring this whole situation. And in the second half, that's when the therapist actually goes to look for him, even though it's not through the whole found footage thing, which was very weird. But I think they marketed it like that, which was a bit weird, and I thought it was going to be like Blair Witch-esque, but I'm glad that it wasn't, because I think that being half of the movie, then the other half of the movie happening where some things happen in there that I didn't really like that, I did like the actual pacing of that part of the movie itself. Now, we will talk about my negatives too, but let's go ahead and talk about the pros. I think, to me, with this concept right here, it's fun, it's unique, and it's creative. Now, by fun in a scary movie, it's very odd to say, but it really intrigued me by what The Backrooms really is, how it was found, and basically it not really having a definitive definition of what The Backrooms is. All you know is that it's just all these rooms that just keep going and going and going and going. And even though the movie itself kind of gives an interpretation of it, it's really the characters and what they think it is. It's not really actually a definitive statement of this is the Backrooms, this is what it explains. And I like that, because sometimes when you have stuff like this, especially when it comes to like mythical creepypasta like things that don't really have a definitive definition of like what they are, their original source and things like that, I think it's good like that. Leave it open to interpretation for the actual viewers and audience, because it can create discussion for that in that sense. And I really did enjoy that, because honestly, coming out of this movie, all the weird stuff that was happening in here, which I do like the fact of there's a definitive like thing and reasoning, kind of antagonistic force within this movie, rather than it just being, you know, just looming rooms, which could have been a great movie as well. But I'm glad I'm going into this movie knowing that there is something there. Now, the something there was a bit underwhelming, but I do like what it turned out to be overall. My second pro is that when it comes to the Backrooms and the whole setting itself, I would have been going insane. I would have been going crazy, and the whole setting itself of just having all these yellow rooms just keep going and going and going, and one door opening up to another room, which opens up to another room with a door, which opens up to another room. That is crazy, because in that, you could just see that you could lose your mind easily within a space like that, especially if you go in there alone, you get lost, you can't find your way out. And some of the things that you actually find down there, Woo! There could be so many more movies made just off of this premise alone, because while we didn't get direct answers in here, it can be explored a bit more and answered a bit more within further sequels, or, you know, further like universal like movies where it's like, it's not a direct sequel to this movie specifically, but it has different characters kind of encompassing the actual Backrooms itself. This movie leaves it open towards that, and I'm not too mad at that, because if we get different directors coming in here, maybe Kane Parsons is still involved with it, because he didn't come up with the creepypasta itself, but he is like really known for making these short films on YouTube for that. But to see like other people go into these situations and then not be tackled the exact same way like it was in this setting in the 90s, it's very intriguing. And I already talked about it, but with my third pro is that nothing is explicitly explained or like said out loud. Like, there is no real explanation of the Backrooms itself. It's kind of like this thing that us as the viewer, we're experiencing it with the cast as well, and they don't know what's happening. They're just trying to think or reason with what's happening, but they're also doing the same thing that we're doing. And I like the fact that their answer themselves is not definitive within this movie, because they're like, I don't know, this is what I'm thinking, but I think it has to be this. But like they keep saying, they think that there's nothing definitive in here to really tell you this is what the Backrooms is, this is why all this is happening. I love that, because sometimes when it comes to a horror movie, the more you explain it, the more it sounds stupid and illogical, and it just sounds dumb overall. With this, it kind of leaves it open with enough interpretation from the cast, but also it's like you kind of got to make that decision on yourself. And the fact that it's just so open, that it's just like, it's open to interpretation for everybody. Like I said, it can create a lot of conversation just around it. And my last pro, usually I'm not a guy that is fond of found footage like that, but I gotta say the found footage section within this movie was probably the most intense and the most enjoyable part of this movie. Like, when we got into that part, I'm like, okay, I thought it was supposed to be handled a different way, because I thought it was supposed to be found footage, but really it's just them recording it and we're following them in their POV as they're recording it. And oh man, this gave me vibes of Blair Witch Project, which it didn't necessarily hit the strides like it did in that movie, because the found footage or the, you know, recording footage POV shots that we got, to me, that felt a lot more intense, especially with the section and the segment of the movie it was in, because it was like about in the first third / second third of the movie itself. And I really found myself enjoying this, and the suspense, the anticipation of what was happening, things happening. Oh my gosh, the chaos that ensued. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is the first time that I really was like looking at the found footage, and I was like, I really like this. I really like the way that this was done right here, especially because it really didn't overstay its welcome. Now it's time to get to my negatives and the things I didn't like about the movie. And I'm not going to rag on this movie because I really enjoyed it. When it comes to me and the enjoyment of entertainment, as long as it's creative, unique, and it does something fun, I'm gonna be in there. I gotta be immersed within this experience right here. But my first negative has to be a certain character just wasn't strongly developed enough in this movie, and they play a prominent role in this movie. And I'm just like, compared to the first character, I'm like, you know, we was there. But then when we switched, because I knew eventually we had to switch, and I'm like, all right, I get it, but I really don't get it. Like, you try to put something in there to develop this character a bit more, but to me, it just kind of filled up space in the movie that didn't need to be there, which goes to my second point, is that the pacing was kind of off a bit, and the movie ran a bit too long for me, because if we took out certain character development moments, which were really flashbacks within the movie, if we took them out, the movie would not be different at all. Now, there is a certain point in the movie where this person uses a certain thing from the past to their advantage, but besides that, it honestly just could have been replaced with a random object within the environment itself. But overall, the character development moments that they try to give were very weak, lackluster, and it felt like it was something like you try to develop that character so that way we care about this character a bit more, but really it just ended up with me being like, it was there, like, but what does that have to do with the story itself? Now, I could be dumb and there could be some euphemism for the actual character motivations and things like that, but honestly, when it comes to that character development right there, I didn't really care for it like that. Second / third negative that I had about the movie was that there is something that is introduced at the beginning of the movie, has nothing to do with the rest of the movie until we get to the end of the movie, and I'm just like, that felt tacked on. Like, that felt like that wasn't needed. It really wasn't needed towards the end of the movie, because I'm just like, why? And this also goes into my last negative of the movie as well, where I'm just like, y'all did this specifically just to have sequels, because when we get to this part of the movie, which is really the end, it just feels so off compared to what we got at the beginning of the movie and the second third of the movie itself. Because when we got to this part right here, I just felt like it kind of took off the whole vibes. It kind of reminded me a bit of Long Legs towards the ending, but to me, it stuck the landing in that movie versus this right here. It just felt like they just put it in here so we could have more sequel bait, so we could have more things open-ended. And I'm just like, to me, the backroom concept itself, everything that was happening in the movie previously, it left a lot of things already open-ended enough to where it's just like, I don't need this ending right here for you to sequel bait me into watching the next movie, because honestly, I don't want the same characters within the next movie. I want a different cast of characters within the next movie, which, I mean, if you watch the movie, that kind of has to happen anyway. But overall, for me, this movie was a very fun time for me. My fiance, who I went to go see it with, did not enjoy it. She kept falling asleep. But man, I gotta say, watching a movie like this, we gotta make horror weird again, man. We gotta make horror have personality again, man, because watching Obsession, loved it. Seeing Passenger, man, but seeing the Backrooms, oh, I'm back in there, baby. Yes, sir. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie right here. Not to say that it's a perfect horror movie by any means, but there's a lot of things I do like about this movie and the trajectory that we're going with within horror, especially with these YouTubers turned directors and feature-length films coming to the big screen. I really do enjoy that, especially some of the personality that they inject within these movies as well, and some of the isms that they bring from YouTube into this as well, because you can definitely tell when it's a YouTuber coming from YouTube to direct the movie, because there's a certain energy about it, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing because it feels like they're actually trying. It's not a cash grab. They're actually passionate about the art form of horror rather than just making a quick cash grab. I'm looking at you, Passenger. But that's about it for the Backroom. Let me know if you guys watched it down below. Should we talk about spoilers? I think we should talk a little bit about spoilers. So let's go ahead and talk about spoilers for a little bit. Man, the male lead character in this movie, first of all, the way that we developed him, I liked his dialogue. I like his interactions with the therapist character who later has to go and find him in the back rooms. Oh man, having to go through his trauma, what he's dealing with, and the fact that he is living in the same store that he manages, and then the random fact of him trying to find out what's happening in there. Obviously he's a drunk, so there's a little bit of skepticism to believing what he's saying, because it's like, yo, you might just be hallucinating that because you do be drinking. But I do like the fact that with his character, he is developed well enough to where I'm just like, I'm a bit sympathetic for him. But the reveal and the dialogue interaction that we have later on when the therapist goes down there, she finds him and they had that little dinner meeting or whatever in the kitchen. Oh man, that probably has to be one of the best scenes within the movie, because the back and forth, him not taking accountability for his actions and him blaming his wife for everything that's going wrong in his life. Oh man, I was living for that moment. And the fact of, we actually got a little bit of, not explanation, but view of like creatures being down there in the back rooms, and the fact of he's been eating on some of these creatures, and these creatures, like he said, they remember these people, but they don't remember these people. And I like the way that he described the back rooms to the therapist when he first found it and wanted to tell somebody about it, saying like, imagine if someone who never saw a dog, you explain to them what a dog is or what it looks like, and you had them draw it. Oh my gosh, I love that explanation, because to me, that helped define what the movie really was and what the back rooms really is, because there's no definitive answer for that, because we don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. They're figuring it out just as we're figuring it out along with them. I really did enjoy that. And the fact of, at the end, when it had that monster like pirate thing that was from the store that he manages, I was like, whoa, very, very surprised when that monster came out and that was a thing that was chasing them. And the fact of, there has to be some type of inkling, because when he was down there with his actual co-workers, or, you know, his underlings at his job, and they was like, oh, look out. And we thought that the monster would kill him as well. But I guess him and the monster were kind of cool and working together, because I guess it's kind of him as well. But the monster was bigger than a lot of the other beings that was down there as well. So that was something that was confusing that I wish kind of was explained, but the more you explain it, it was going to sound dumb anyway. So the whole monster chase sequence, I did like that. I did enjoy it. It was very intense, of her hurting herself at one point, and she basically having to like crawl around and trying to get around and get away from this big old monster. I do hate the fact of how the monster was defeated at the end, because of the whole agency that came out at the end, because like I said in the review part, the agent that was introduced at the end, I mean at the beginning of the movie, he literally came at the end of the movie to be like, oh yeah, we're running this experiment to see what this is. I hate when these movies do stuff like that, because I'm just like, why do we always need some type of agency to get involved so we could learn what something is when they're meddling into this? I'm just like, all right, stereotypical. But the rest of the movie before that, I thoroughly enjoyed it, especially that found footage, or the I guess, recording POV section when it was getting chased by the monster, but we didn't see the monster itself, but we knew that there was a monster down there. Oh man, that was intense. But that's it for the spoiler chat. Let me know what you think about this movie down in the comment section down below. Like I said, thank you guys for watching. If you're new to the channel, you haven't already, go ahead, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button as well, and get down in that comment section so that way I can see your thoughts on the movie as well. My name is Chase. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.